Hey guys, how's it going? This is Michael with Dweeb Culture. We are reviewing Bad Batch, episode number 3, Replacements. Joining me always are my two co-hosts, Mitch
Hey guys.
and Cole.
Hey, what's going on?
Alrighty, so this is episode number 3. This is another 30-minute episode here. This is entitled Replacements. Now, I do have to say, after coming off of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where we were moving a mile a minute, this is a lot slower pace and a lot more storytelling as opposed to just plot development.
Yeah, it seems to be that the first season of this show is taking a similar sort of style to the first season of the Clone Wars, which is you can tell that Disney means for the Bad Batch to not be a limited series. It's meant to be a series where this could potentially be 3, 4, 5 seasons long, similar to Rebels or Clone Wars, which was all the way up at 7, because they do not seem to be in a rush to introduce even an overarching story arc. That's the big one that's crazy is right now the plot line is they're out. We don't really know what we're going to do from here. Here's Omega. Is she going to be a part of the team or not? Yep, she is. Great. And, I don't want to disparage the show. It is doing things that for the Star Wars hardcore is very interesting. It is definitely building more into the lore of the formation of the Empire, specifically as it pertains to when they transition away from using clones and into using Stormtroopers instead. We got to see some of that in this episode, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, definitely slow progression, which, it's not a problem, but it does mean that our review episode is going to be shorter.
Definitely. It's going to be a lot more character and plays basically like plot projection based as opposed to the actual episode. But in this episode, we do start off with Omega in the starship. And they are going, and it is revealed that they weren't really planning on having a child on their battleship, as it were. And so she doesn't have a place to stay. She's kind of just there. And at one point, Wrecker wants to take her food, and Hunter's like, "Dude, she's a kid. She don't even have a place to stay." He's like, "Oh, okay."
You go take his food now.
Exactly. And then we discover that the ship has sustained heavy damage from from leaving orbit and getting in a firefight in the last episode. So they have to crash land. And do we know what planet they end up crashing landing on?
I didn't recognize it.
No, I thought it looked like Camino, like the moon of Camino or something. But
yeah, maybe they didn't get too far. Well, they did jump into hyperspace for a little bit there.
Yeah, they fell out of hyperspace.
They fell out of hyperspace. At first, I was thinking like the Empire pulled them out somehow with their chips, because that was something Tech was working on. Making sure the chips weren't being able to be read in any way.
Yeah.
But they just said this rock. They didn't say any particular place.
Well, the plot of this episode seemed to be solidation that Omega is a part of the community there with the Bad Batch. And not only that, but she was kind of trusted to be an actual asset to the Bad Batch instead of just, somebody who's along for the ride. And she went into her stride. She found her way. Hunter got knocked out or incapacitated, and Omega stepped up and kind of took charge of the little situation there and made it and found a way for Hunter not to die.
Which is hysterical because we just talked about how quickly Hunter accepted that it was not, in fact, safer and smarter to put this child with a family that is like a good sound family of somebody they know and trust. And instead, this episode, she's like, I'm a part of the team, right? He's like, yeah, you're right. Let's go into a hostile, toxic air, not breathable planet with a presumably
dragons.
She's probably only, you know what I mean? Like she's probably only a year old when you talk about clones and the accelerated growth. But, she looks like she's what, 12, 11, 12, young. But you know what? I get it. They don't want to spend the time on, hey, we're hammering episode after episode. She's a child. She's not a part of the team. They did that last episode, and this episode, we're probably not going to even get. Yeah, we're probably not going to even get that conversation in following episodes. They'll probably already be accepted that Omega, which
Omega.
I'm having a really hard time getting this. No, her name in the show is Omega, spelled Omega, but it is pronounced
really?
Omega.
I
They
thought
say
she
that
even
over
called
and
her.
over
I
with
thought
her.
she even called herself Omega.
Nope, Omega. Every time she says Omega, Omega, Omega. Every time.
Really?
Yes, because it bugs me. Every time that I'm watching it, I'm like, what? That's not how you pronounce that. Every time. But anyways, whatever.
I didn't know. So, hey, it's her name. She knows how to pronounce it, okay?
No. Well, she is a clone, so.
Look, my Chael. Sometimes you're just wrong about pronouncing your own name. My Chael.
You know what? She's probably the last clone. That's probably why they called her Omega.
Yeah. She looked to be the only juvenile clone on Camino.
Yeah, so she's probably the last clone that's been made or is going to be made. Maybe that's why they call her Omega. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
But
with force powers. She's going to have force powers, I'm telling you guys.
Maybe.
It's going to happen.
Could be. That'd be sweet. But yeah, so we get the development of that, and she throws. So we see that she doesn't have necessarily bronze because she's a child. And we do see that she does have brains though, because even though she didn't really have the necessarily ability to shoot the beast, she did figure out what its motivation was.
Yep.
and kind of allure him away with a flashlight. So she's using her brains, which seems to be something none of the other ones are using ever, with the exception of maybe Tech, but he still uses his shooting. He still would prefer to shoot somebody than outsmart.
It was kind of more of like a childish, notice that she did. It's like, oh, it's like a puppy dog. He just wants a flashlight. Here you go.
Yeah.
Now, in this episode in particular, with the dynamic between the team, originally the team did not include Echo. It was in the final season of the Clone Wars that Echo was adopted in that team. We kind of see in this episode, like, Echo's role on the team is kind of just like a second level Tech. Like, we have Tech. He's the brainy one. And then Echo's kind of also the brainy one. Kind of. He's a
little bit of an outlander.
He is a traditional clone. But, he's the one that's in charge of fixing the ship while Tech's working on fixing their brains. And they have that back and forth between him and Tech. Like, yeah, but it would be, I'd be even better at it if we were both working on it. So his role is very, it sounds like jack of all trades type thing. Like, he's very transitionary between roles within the team, which is interesting. Just for fans of the Clone Wars, he's probably the one that they have the most connection to, being that he was a regular character in the early seasons of the Clone Wars. But
you know what? Maybe that's the reason his name is Echo. Maybe he's just kind of echoing what everybody else is. He's supportive. He's a reinforcement, right? He's kind of just there in the background, but he's support. Maybe that's why they did it.
But maybe. But with the dynamic of the team, that sort of continued Ninja Turtle-esque theme seems to still be present, which is cool. I think that this episode really did solidify for us that the role of Omega on the team is going to be seemingly the eyes of a child, the character that younger viewers are supposed to identify with the most.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
this the episode, even though it was just briefly mentioned about going back to the chip part, that is kind of what's going to come to fruition a little bit more, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. And that he's like, oh man, can they track our chips? What are they planning, like, behind the scenes, and what they can use to their advantage with that?
To me, it sounded like that's probably going to be. They introduced two things. They introduced the tech that Tech is working on, and then they also introduced at the end that they now share the mission of not only finding like a safe haven from the Empire, but of rescuing Crosshairs. They want to actually rescue him and bring him back onto the team. So I imagine whatever the chip thing that Tech is working on might be the device to deactivate Crosshairs programming to bring him back over to their side.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Make it work for them. Yeah.
And
we don't leave any of us behind.
Yeah, that's what they said, right?
Probably the more substantial and more important transition of the episode is Crosshairs making his way into a leadership position with a new team that's supposed to be, it's humans, it's not clones, and it is the top elite of the elite team. This is the Green Squad. This is the really good team here from all over the galaxy. And he assumes the leadership role. He has some conflict with the one of the other people that is in the leadership roles, probably the second in command. But Crosshair, like a good soldier, just wants to finish out his mission. Where Hunter failed that before, and Crosshairs was in second in command, so he couldn't do anything. This time he is in command, and he has basically another Hunter on the team saying, "Hey, we shouldn't kill these people. These are just civilians." Well, now Crosshairs has his way. He's the leader on the team. He gets to call the shots, and he takes his shot on basically Hunter and kills him. And that kind of solidifies the rest of the troops when he orders them to execute the civilians. They see this power move, and they're like, okay, good soldiers follow orders. Let's do it. And they just burn them alive.
Well,
and shoot them.
They talked about it in this episode, and they talked about it in the last episode. Now Governor Tarkin, soon to be Grand Moff Tarkin. He's made it clear that he's not a fan of the clone program. And they talk a little bit in this episode about how the Empire might transition away from the clone program into a conscripted program, which we know from the lore to be what the Stormtroopers were. They were not clones. They were conscripted soldiers into the Empire's armed services.
Which is probably the coolest thing for the hardcore Star Wars nerds.
Absolutely.
This. Like, saying, like, all right, what happened to these Camino people? What happened to all the regular clones?
Definitely. But what they had said in an earlier episode is they had said that, it would probably be the clones that would train these conscripted services before they essentially took over eventually. And that's why they put Crosshairs as the leader of this team that they send back to eliminate Saw Gerrera's forces. Yes, there is that leader of the conscripted team that apparently has already been working together, and Crosshairs is the new one who's suddenly put in charge of them. He gives Crosshairs a lot of trouble throughout their mission, just, kind of chipping away at him. Well, you're the leader now, but you won't always be, things like that.
And, he was prejudiced against clones for sure.
Yeah, but at the end, you're right. This is kind of something to remember too. The Clone Wars did have killing, but the show aimed for children really tried to stray away from that as much as possible. You would get a lot of blaster fire with clones, and they would not hit anything, and then they'd run up and punch somebody in the face and knock them out, and then so on and so forth. Or if they did hit something, it would be a droid. But anytime there was like human on human violence or alien on human violence, there was very little killing. There was times when someone would get shot, but it was often off camera, which this kind of was too. If you remember, it shows Crosshairs with a pistol drawn, the blast, and then it doesn't show the clone trooper's face. It just shows the body fall down. But it does show the blast actually hit, and it shows that he's dead, and then it shows the lead up into them essentially committing genocide against the civilians. And that already showed that the potential for this series seems to be less limited than what was aired for cable television in the Clone Wars show and the Rebels show. So we have already seen in the Bad Batch when they're fighting that they tend to do very little killing, and then now that Crosshairs is gone from their team, they really do little killing because he's the one that would snipe people and he did not hit them up close. And now anytime that they seem to have to fight, it's Wrecker, and Wrecker, does he even carry a gun, or does he just run around and punch people? Because I'm pretty sure he just runs around and punches people.
Yeah. It's basically Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
But
yeah, with that darker, theme going on, that goes hand in hand with the new Empire, which I think, they're trying to really push towards the audience.
I think
Dark Empire that shows killing, kind of.
They're trying to just kind of walk this new line where they definitely want this to be a family-friendly show. I think that it's aimed to be more family-friendly than the Mandalorian is. but being that it's on its own streaming service, they're not limited to the same. They don't have the same limits placed on them that they had before on cable television. So the potential for this show is still huge. We could still see a lot of things that maybe we wouldn't expect moving forward. I really liked Crosshairs' storyline throughout this episode, specifically because it enlightened us to more about what's developing with the Empire behind the scenes, and it really built Crosshairs into a more formidable villain for this, at least the season, maybe the series.
Yeah. For sure, his ruthlessness makes him more formidable. Whereas before, Hunter wouldn't do certain things. I think certain things can be done if you don't have a conscience, and he doesn't. And they kind of solidified that this episode as well, making sure that everybody knew, hey, this isn't Crosshairs doing, even though we did see that there was conflict before in the earlier episodes. This is the chip that they have been implanting. This is the chip's doing.
And it also shows the Bad Batch's mission to save him too.
Yeah, so exactly. I was going to say, yeah, good call. Yeah, which paves way that there is a redeemable possibility for Crosshairs. Now that coming down the road, is he actually redeemable? Kind of like the way the Winter Soldier was, right? He was cloned and whatnot.
Took the words right out of my mouth. We just had this conversation in the season finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier when we talked about Carly, and we said, hey, during the course of the show, in an early episode, when she detonates a building with innocents in it,
we'll try not to do spoilers for Falcon and Winter Soldier, just in case people haven't watched it. But you can do general stuff.
Yes, I already did. There's a villain that essentially at one point in the show kills innocents. And that happens here. And we talked about it in the season finale of our last series. Please go check it out. We talked about it saying, there's certain beats in Hollywood that are tropes that kind of just stick around. It's very rare that they get broken. And one of them is when a character commits an unredeemable act, the only way that they end up finding justice or finding redemption is through their death. We saw it, and I am going to spoil this now because you have to have seen this by now, but we saw it in the last episode of the new Star Wars trilogy, right? With
the Force
Ren.
Awakens.
Yeah. It's the Rise of Skywalker.
All right. Yeah.
We saw it there. The only way that Ben Solo could be redeemed was with his sacrifice at the end. Now, this is a little different. They do include the fact that this character's actually not in control of himself. So it's not him making the willful decision. He was brainwashed, and I think that does leave him out to where he could potentially be redeemed. Of course, if he is redeemed,
that puts him in the Winter Soldier category.
Yes, of course, if he is redeemed, we're probably going to deal with all the same things that the Winter Soldier does, where the guilt and the trauma from all the years of.
But we did establish beforehand that he was kind of that way anyway.
He was already loyal to the Empire.
The chip just put him over the edge.
So. That's where it's a toss-up for me. I don't know. I don't really know what to expect with Crosshairs in particular. He could commit all these terrible actions. I think, to make a reference to a different show that ended about 30 years ago, I think he's kind of the Green Ranger character. Yes, this is a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers a simile here, but he's kind of the Green Ranger character. He's evil under the brainwash of the evil Emperor, but potentially could be saved, rejoin the team, and be a fan favorite character. Who knows?
Mitch, we all know how spoilers for Power Rangers.
I'm giving spoilers for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1. Sorry, guys. It's going to happen.
Mitch, we don't have a large audience. We don't want to offend the people who haven't seen it yet.
God, turn this off.
But yeah, all in all, it was a very developmental episode. Where we had, again, the two main things were Omega is now part of the team and can be relied upon as such, and Crosshairs is evil and he's going to be the villain, it seems, in this series. And I like it. I like Crosshairs as the villain. I think he's definitely a good villain to have, and he's kind of like the opposite of Hunter, right? Or he's kind of in tandem with the Hunter. The Hunter kind of tracks people, and then the sniper Crosshairs finishes them off, right? So I think it's a good kind of balance between the two.
It showing the transformation of the Empire through his eyes and from his perspective is a really good way to lead us into. Sorry, hold on, guys. We experienced some technical difficulties for a moment, but we're gonna fix that here in a second.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a good transition between. We go. I think it is a good transition. Like we get to see the Empire's development between his eyes. I think that's a good.
Yeah, it keeps the story personal. It's the Bad Batch, and really all the characters we're focusing on are members of the Bad Batch.
Yeah, that's perfect.
We get to see the introduction of the Empire's major characters like Grand Moff Tarkin. I'm sure we're going to see Darth Vader at some point. You know, that stuff we're all going to get to see, but only, so far at least, only as it pertains to the story of Crosshairs and his involvement within the Empire.
Did you guys remember or recognize the name of that up-and-coming Emperor, the now Admiral of the Empire, training the new troopers? You guys know what character I'm talking about? Tarkin appointed him to put together this death squad that went to the planet and to carry out the mission.
I didn't pay attention to that, but he did look very similar to a Rebels villain. Do you know if that's who it is?
I don't know. I was wondering if you recognize.
Oh, I thought you were gonna tell us, Cole.
Yeah, I thought this was like a quiz. That's something we could definitely look into for the question.
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah. Well, we'll pay attention.
Agent Kallus. He had a similar hairstyle to Agent Kallus, who is the major Imperial villain in Star Wars Rebels, but I'm hesitant to say that's him because I believe Rebels takes place about like 14 years after this series. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll look into it for the next episode though.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Cool. Well, anyway, that's going to wrap us up. Thank you guys very much for watching. Really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Let us know what you think of the series so far. If you've been watching it, what series we should do next. We are putting everything on podcast. If you're listening to this on a podcast, we do a YouTube channel. Mitch is also doing another series. Mitch, you want to talk about that real quick?
Yes, please. So this one is not on our podcast service yet. It's only on YouTube. But I have also been reviewing, now that I completed Invincible, I've been reviewing Castlevania, Netflix's Castlevania Season 4, the last, supposedly, season. I watched the first 3 seasons. I tie back what we're seeing into the first 3 seasons. Obviously, this channel didn't exist when the first 3 seasons came out. But so far, we're on the 3rd episode of the review of the 5-part review of the season, and it is killer, phenomenal. Can't recommend it enough. So please come check us out on that content as well.
Cool. There we go. Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it. And as always, live long and may the Force be with you.
Later, guys.
Later, guys.